This is Chuck Johnson. He's taking fighting into a completely different direction. In this show, we're going to enter a world of martial arts where the emphasis is truly on the art. Chuck Johnson is an action actor who is an expert in East Asian style fight choreography. He has spent the last 7 years in Japan studying his craft. This is a film fighting style originally made super famous by Bruce Lee and later by Jackie Chan and Jet Li. Chuck's specialty, as you can see, is fantasy fight choreography. Chuck mainly uses Taekwondo, but also studies capoeira and Japanese-style theatrical swordplay. He even uses a bit of boxing and Wing Chun. But before Chuck was a cool stuntman in Japan, he was a kid in a small town in Michigan competing in local Taekwondo competitions. Here, Chuck takes a rocking shot to the head. Keep your hands up, Chuck.
I came from a small town in Michigan, and when I was 15 I started Olympic Taekwondo training, and 2.5 years later I got my black belt, and 6 days after that I was a Michigan State Olympic champion for both sparring and forms. And you know, from there I had all these big dreams of going to the Olympics and whatnot, so I went to Korea to start training. And you know, after 3 years of training in Korea, I came to learn that there's a difference between people who fight for a living and people who fight for a hobby. And I kind of realized that, you know, at heart I didn't have that raw dog kind of like kind of energy that it takes.
You didn't need to kill people.
Yeah, you know, I didn't really need to kill people, you know what I mean? Like, I've got a really chill personality. I like martial arts for martial arts, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really about dominating people in the ring for me. But I did love being on stage, you know, I mean, like, I loved having the crowds, you know, and I loved the rush of it. I ended up winning the Intercollegiate Championships in Hong Kong. I won one national championship in the States, and then having that, you know, Asian background or whatever, I just thought, well, what the hell? You know, I've lived in Korea and I lived in China. Something told me to come to Japan. You know, at heart, the thing I always really love has always been kind of the stage, and it's always been Taekwondo demonstrations. You know, like, I love the jumping triple kicks, I love the, you know, double spin kicks and stuff like that. That was always really my passion. But anyway, as a function of that demo background, I ended up getting a small role in a Godzilla movie.
So you've been in a bunch of movies now, right?
I wouldn't say a bunch. I've been in a fair number, but usually really small parts, right? Just because there's not that many roles for brothers out here. You know what I mean? So I've been in a few. I was in the Geki Rangers movie, which is kind of like, you know, Geki Rangers is kind of like Power Rangers, right? And then my first one was Godzilla. Beyond that, I was in a film that Shimamura-san directed called Death Trance. So yeah, I mean, I've done okay. I get a lot of work playing bodyguards on TV, which I guess is cool because that's what I used to do anyway. So kind of fits, right?
So art and reality are kind of one there.
Exactly.
So what are the differences, rather, between like action and real martial arts?
To be honest, it's a world apart. I mean, they're so different. And I didn't know that getting into it, right? Like, I thought, you know, if you're good at martial arts, you're going to be good at action. You know, but that's not necessarily the case. You know, being a strong fighter doesn't translate to being good on screen. I mean, that's another big difference, is you can't move on camera the way you'd move to actually fight. In a real fight, you want your techniques to be as small as possible so that they don't telegraph, so that the other guy can't see them. You know, whereas on camera, you know, you want everybody to be able to see it. That's the point of it. You know, a regular hook might look like this, whereas an action hook might look like this. You know, the other thing to keep in mind too is that you have to sweep across the viewing range of the lens, right? If I throw my hook and I throw it up here or down here, it's no good, right? It doesn't look good on camera. It has to go right across the front of the lens. And you have to remember things like that. For myself, that was the hardest part, is the reactions training. Because coming from a fighting background, you know, you're taught to hide reactions. It doesn't matter how hard you get hit, you're never supposed to show it. So boom, right?
One more time,
so you know, and you have to add in, that's the other thing, is you have to act. You know, it's not just that you have to remember the choreography and, you know, you have to remember the sequence. You have to do the sequence in sync with the other action players, you have to act while you're doing it, because if it looks like you're trying to remember, if it looks like it's mechanical, it's not going to sell. The worst situation I've been in out here is I got asked to do this fight with this, Japanese karate champion or whatever, because I used to be a taekwondo champion myself, and I could tell I was being set up. I don't even speak Japanese that well, but it was pretty obvious. I ended up stepping into the ring with 16-ounce gloves while my opponent was wearing 12-ounce gloves. They told me to wear shin guards. I go into the ring, he's not wearing any. So I was going in there with an injured hand, dehydrated, starving. It was rough, man. It was a brutal match. It was probably the ugliest fight I've ever fought in my life. I wouldn't take that experience back for anything. Not for anything, because it was that match taught me how to fight. It really did. And if it's one thing I learned, it's that being a fighter, it's not about the matches that you can win. It's about the ones that you probably can't.
You have the tape?
I don't. I've never even seen it. Never even bothered to watch.
He's still bitter. Look at him. He's still bitter. Years later, the rage is still on.
But, you know what? The thing is, I think life fundamentally gives you a choice. You can control or you can be controlled. You can let your anger control you, or you can control your anger. There's no way I could get a regular job at a regular school and then still keep doing my action training. So I just started stripping. So I'd be up from, I'd go into work at like 8 o'clock at night, be up until 6 o'clock the next morning, because I was stripping and hosting. So just drinking with clients. It was a combination of people.
Like who?
You put it like that, we had.
You're speaking these vague terms. We want to know who exactly. Who was buying the
that was that was interesting. We had.
And how
we had women. We had some not women. We had some in between men and women. We had some guys that were there for the hostesses who just happened to come down and were just drunk and just didn't care. And yeah. Yeah. So yeah, for 3 months, man, I would do that and then, get home at 7 o'clock in the morning, usually drunk, wake up, take some aminos, drink some water, go to action training, and that was how I got by.
For all the bad experiences you've had in Japan, you've had a really good experience with your team, right?
Yeah. The guys I do action training with, they've been like my saving grace out here. Really, they're the reason that I can still honestly say that I love Japan. And they've just been amazing. I didn't know, I'd been in Japan about a year, but I still didn't know that much about Japanese culture. I knew nothing about action as compared to real martial arts, and they've just been so cool. They've just been patient. They've been helping me along and everything. So when I made my last demo reel, about 15 people came out to help.
And they made that demo reel for free for you, right?
Yeah, and they didn't charge. If I had to pay for that, it probably would have been, around $8,000 or $9,000 at least, just for the camera rentals and, the equipment, the lighting people, the camera people, the stuntmen, the makeup people, the costume rentals, all of that. It easily would have topped out $8,000 or $9,000, and they all just came together to help me make it happen. I love them, I really do.
Okay. That's because you're part of the group now.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it is that, aside from Yashiki, I've never spoken to any of them in my own language. So for me, it feels like they don't even know me that well, because they've never had a chance to talk to me in the language that I'm really, really expressive in. They've only heard me talk to them in Japanese, and I've got the communicative abilities of about a 3-year-old. Or maybe a 4-year-old in Japanese, right? So, but even so, it's like somehow, they managed to key into my character. They managed to find the person beyond the language.